Today we're going to be looking at some of the elite infantry of the Imperial Guard, the special weapon squads and command squads. Hello and welcome back to Auspex Tactics, the strategy focused 40k channel, where we're all about getting the most out of our miniatures on the tabletop. Today we're back for another Imperial Guard unit review, where we'll be going over the merits and disadvantages of special weapon and command squads. We'll take a look at their datasheets, any obvious buffs and synergies with your Guard infantry armies on the table, and how I would run them in-game in 8th edition. In the background, many regiments maintain 6-man squads of specialists, armed with and trained in a variety of roles, categorised under the catch-all term of special weapon squads. They may be dedicated sniper teams, or combat engineer type teams aimed at breaching enemy fortifications with tools such as flamers, plasma guns or melter guns. They'll often be requisitioned by certain platoons for specific missions, and providing some raw recruits with the expertise that comes with seasoned experience. Command squads are other highly flexible units utilised by the Imperial Guard officers, and they represent their personal retinue when commanding on the field of battle. Both company and platoon commanders both have their own command squads, and they typically number 5 men if you include the accompanying officer. Usually the command squad will have various members with specific roles within the platoon, whether that's a Master Vox operator to relay their officer's orders to nearby squads, the company medic, and it's here that you'll also find standard bearers, whether that's for the company or the regiment. Let's see what these specialised squads can do for us in-game then. I think we'll start with the Special Weapons Squad because they're a bit simpler, and credit as always to Warhammer for this excellent datasheet. Special Weapons Squads are elite choices for Codex Astra Militarum, and they each contain 6 guardsmen, no more and no less. They cost the same as your standard infantry squads, so 4 points a model, and each model is armed with a lasgun and frag grenades. It is worth noting that they don't have a sergeant, so they are only leadership 6, and this does mean that if you lose 4 or 5 models, there's a good chance that the rest of the squad might leg it as well. Now out of the team, 3 models, again no more and no less, must replace their lasgun with an item from the special weapons list, and these special weapons are a sniper rifle, flamer, grenade launcher, melter gun or plasma gun. Now you really can add in a little bit of extra firepower punch with these options, depending on what sort of role your infantry are struggling with. Sniper rifles are cheap at 2 points a model, making the team 30 points, though you really will need multiple of them if you want to really stack any wounds on enemy characters. They can be good backfield squads for sitting around holding objectives, while contributing a little bit to the game though. Flamer squads certainly an option, and can be a little bit better, with options such as the cast chance burn them out ability, but I personally don't feel that flamers are really all that good in the guard arsenal at the moment. They only really do anti-infantry, which we do very well already with mass lasfire, and they are incredibly short range, making them very inflexible. I would personally typically rather run one of the others. Grenade launchers can be a very cheap and general purpose fire support unit. At 3 points extra per model, you'll put your team at 33 points, and I feel this is a fairly good little balanced unit for supporting out a wider infantry formation. The grenade launchers won't necessarily draw masses more fire to the unit, but they will be very reliably plinking away with a little bit of damage at 24-inch range, and will just add to the general weight of fire coming out of your army without costing you very much at all. Melter guns will cost you 10 points more on a ballistic skill 4 platform. They will just about do better against heavy armour than the plasma gun, but they typically won't do better than it point for point if you are willing to overcharge. For this reason I prefer the much more flexible plasma gun. It's cheaper, it has an option to fire a longer range, it will generally do anti-tank better than the melter gun if you are willing to risk the overcharge, and it's far better than the expensive melter gun against medium and light infantry. Overall, my favourite weapons for this team are a very cheap sniper squad to sit at the back, a grenade launcher squad to just add to the weight of bodies and weight of firepower coming out of your infantry lines, or a dedicated plasma team that can actually deal a reasonable amount of damage point for point. If we move on to the command squad now, these are also an elite's choice, and you can take 1 command squad per infantry officer in your army. You get 4 men in the squad. They're veterans that cost 6 points a model, and again at base they're armed with a lasgun and frag grenades. Being veterans, they do have ballistic skill 3+, so we'll hit that a little bit better, but they also don't have a squad sergeant in there, so you do have a pretty decent chance of running if you take a few casualties. Now the command squad has a very flexible weapon loadout. You can replace the las guns with las pistols and chainswords, which means that they can be a little bit more close combat orientated than your standard guard, though honestly unless you're both cast-chan and pursuing a very heavy melee strategy, I would just keep the standard lasgun. 1 veteran can take a Vox caster if you are investing in the Vox net. In general I prefer not to and just have more officers ordering things that they're actually within 6-inch range of. 1 veteran can replace their lasgun with a heavy flamer for a fairly expensive 14 points, though in general I wouldn't typically do this because you're basically wasting the ballistic skill 3 platform, and it's really not a good delivery system for heavy flamers, being on a slow moving and very easy to kill infantry squad. I know it's very fun to have a guardsman with a heavy flamer, but they really just aren't very good and not very well pointed in game at the moment. More interestingly, one veteran can take a regimental standard. This one will cost you 5 points, and it means that any friendly regiment units within 6 inches add 1 to their leadership when they're within 6 inches of the regimental standard. Now, a lot of players do seem to enjoy the regimental standard. Personally, I've really never been convinced myself. Already at 6 points a model in an infantry battle line, the command squad is already a prime target. If you give it a flag on top of that, it'll be 29 points for just 4 guardsmen, so if the enemy has any sense of target priority, they will be shooting it down first. In general, I think it's more efficient to get a bit of leadership buffs from commissars if you really want to soup up your guards' leadership potential, as they're only 16 points, so half the price of this squad pretty much, and they get the additional protection of being characters. One model can take a medipack for 5 points, which means that if you're within 3 inches of an Astra Militarum infantry unit that's lost casualties or taken some damage, and you roll the dice and on a 4+ at the end of the movement phase, they regained a wound or a lost model is returned to the unit. I think in reality you'd have to get this guy healing for many turns in a row to actually pay for himself, and that is essentially 11 points for that one model with the veteran profile plus the medipack. You're generally going to have been better off just taking more bodies in the first place. You could pretty much get 3 standard guardsmen for the cost of that veteran with the medipack, meaning he'd need to use that medipack ability 4 times in a row for it to actually pay for itself in game. In general, I think it could just use a bit of a points drop if they actually wanted to make it a bit more efficient. Now for me, the most interesting options in the command squad are their access to heavy or special weapons. Firstly, 2 of the veterans may form a veteran heavy weapons team and take an option from the heavy weapons list, such as a missile launcher for 10 points or las cannon for 15. This gives you an interesting sort of pseudo heavy weapon squad, where you could maybe have 2 veterans in a heavy weapon team and maybe have the other couple with snipers, and they could sit back and provide a bit of fairly accurate range support. It is worth noting that the veteran heavy weapons team at 12 points does cost far more than one would normally in a heavy weapons squad, so it does mean that if in general you want bodies with heavy weapons such as missile launchers or las cannons, it's usually going to be more efficient to buy actual heavy weapon squads rather than load up on command squads, but it does mean that you have this option if you've already used your entire quota of heavy weapons teams. Finally, just like the special weapons squad, these guys all have access to special weapons. You can take 4 of the same special weapon, no need for any excess bodies, and they'll all be hitting on 3s with those special weapons due to their upgraded profile. Now you pay a little bit more for the plasma and melters squads here, but it does allow you to focus a lot of very accurate firepower in one hard-hitting punch, and it means that these guys can be quite hard-hitting and quite efficient if, say, you have a couple of command squads jumping out of a Valkyrie or something. I find the grenade launcher quite interesting as well. For 9 points a model, you could have 4 men with grenade launchers, laying down some very accurate ballistic skill 3+ fire, and that would cost you just 36 points for the squad. Compared with the grenade launcher special weapons squad, they have a much higher damage output, but obviously less durability per point due to only having 4 models compared with the grenade launcher special weapons squad's 6. I'm afraid I'd certainly not bother with the flamers on these guys, as you're completely wasting the ballistic skill 3+, making them even less efficient than they normally are, but the sniper rifle can actually be a really interesting pick, as you can have 8-point ballistic skill 3+ snipers, and they actually do work out to be some of the more efficient snipers in the game. In particular, a sniper company command squad is a pretty decent choice for a Cadian list, as they of course get access to the excellent reroll ones when they're standing still. They are actually very slightly more efficient than ratlings at sniping in the Cadian formation, and you can make that potentially even more efficient with orders. 3 squads of these guys, so 12 models for 96 points, will on average do around 2 or 3 wounds to a standard Space Marine Smash Captain per turn, which is actually pretty reasonable for the points invested, and will do far better against any less armoured characters. I'd bear in mind that at 8 points a model they are very fragile and very easy to remove, but in terms of sniper fire they are pretty efficient and pretty hard hitting. So overall for the command squads, I'm not all that convinced that their special medipack and regimental standard massively help them too much, and for supporting guardsmen in that way, I generally feel that you're just generally going to be better with spending more points on 4-point guardsmen in the first place. If trying to run a more optimised list, I think that the command squads are currently best as special weapon caddies, where they can put a lot of very accurate firepower on the enemy for a really quite cheap points cost. So let's talk a little bit more about how we can get more out of these units on the table. In terms of regiments, Cadian are obviously pretty great for anyone who's planning on standing still and shooting, in particular sniper teams, but they can also be helpful for grenade launchers and plasma as well. Getting 4 rerolls to hit is pretty handy, particularly so for the special weapons squad, as it really amps up their firepower. In a Cast-Chan list, I can certainly see special weapons squads just adding to the sheer weight of bodies running at you up the board, particularly things like the grenade launcher doesn't really care too much about moving and firing, or even advancing, so they can definitely add to the weight of numbers and have some general purpose firepower as they move up. Talon could have some more mobile teams, advancing and shooting with special weapons as they go. Boss drones could certainly help out with extra range, and Steel Legion could be particularly strong with plasma guns, having a far longer range of rapid fire. In terms of character support, you can of course order these guys, which I think only really becomes efficient if you are running large amounts of special weapons in the squad, because otherwise they're just a few too few bodies for the order to really have much effect, compared with say issuing first rank, second rank to a massive infantry squad of 10 models. Could be good though for a company commander jumping out of a Valkyrie or a Chimera alongside a bunch of special weapons though. Leadership is a bit of an issue for things, in particular the special weapons squad, who could easily lose 4 models and then almost guarantee lose the last 2, which are going to be the more expensive special weapons. It can well be worth keeping them nearby to a commissar or some other form of increased leadership if you have them, say like Kaschan officers giving +1 morale. As always, things like Yarrick and Harker can give them reroll 1s to hit, which could be particularly good for any plasma toting guys, and make those guns a little bit more of an optimal choice when those guys are around. In terms of stratagems, I wouldn't usually be going overboard with small units like these. They really do need to be able to function on their own, as you can't be wasting command points on very small units. That being said, if you really don't have any better targets for something like Vengeance Vacadia, then a plasma special weapon squad certainly wouldn't do you any harm. If you really want to try and keep the last couple of models around in the squad, you could think about Fight to the Death to take a morale test on a D3 rather than a D6. And you always have the option of something like Take Cover to force the enemy to expend additional firepower to remove them, though I think it's going to be quite rare that this is actually meaningful. It's a lot better employed on bigger units such as standard infantry squads. So how would I actually use these guys in game then? I think with both special weapon squads and command squads, there's 3 main ways that you can use them. You can either have them sat at the back being sniper support and contesting home objectives, and maybe even throw a heavy weapon team in there if you do have a command squad. You can use them as an advancing midfield infantry squad to better support the rest of your guard battle line, or you can have them tooled up with maximal special weapons and transport them to the enemy in something like a Chimera or a Valkyrie. For the first role, I'd pretty much take nothing but snipers in each squad, so they can chip away at the enemy without making too much of a spectacle of themselves, because if you do invest in heavy weapons and things, then the squad will become target priority number 1 very quickly. I just use them as area denial at the back, hold objectives, and blink away wounds at characters. They might not do loads over the course of the game, but they will be helping secure your backfield, and every so often they might get lucky and kill a key buffing character. For the midfield support role, there's a few different ways that you could go. If you're going special weapons, I would advocate the grenade launcher, as it's a good generalist profile with a decent range that doesn't matter if it's moving, and it's also very cheap, meaning that it's not quite as painful when the squad inevitably gets shot down first. As I said, for the command squad, I'm not really the biggest fan of using regimental standards or medics, outside of the fact that it's quite fluffy and pretty awesome to have on the table. If we're talking raw gameplay, then I think it's more efficient just to use more infantry squad bodies, and maybe have commissars for morale purposes. With these guys, I'd just be wanting to advance up slightly behind the main battle line, maybe hug cover a little bit more than the standard infantry squads to mean that your opponent's a little bit more punished for taking them out, and just use their firepower and bodies to contribute to the general weight of numbers and cause some casualties via attrition with grenade shots. If you are finding a way to deliver them into the game though, say you're running a mechanised Chimera force, or you've got a Valkyrie where you can put a few of the squads in, my personal choice would be to tool them up all with plasma guns, have an officer nearby to give them all reroll 1s, get into rapid fire range, and jump out and fry a hard target. Point for point, their damage output like this is reasonably efficient, the main downside being is that you're almost guaranteed to lose them straight back in reprisal, just because point for point they're pretty flimsy in terms of defence. Obviously if you can take any measures to avoid that, then it's best, say if you can get them out in range of their target, but maybe out of line of sight for the majority of the opponent's army, so they can't just shoot them straight back. I feel that this could be easier said than done though. I do think that both of these units, particularly the special weapon squads, were hit pretty harshly by the rule of 3, as they really are the sort of squads that you'd quite happily spam for days if you had the option to. I remember in early 8th I was using quite a lot of plasma gun special weapon squads, just as pretty much line infantry, whereas now you can only take 3. If you do take those sort of units, then they will just be shot down in short order, as the opponent's always going to target the squads that have the highest amount of plasma guns in, ignoring the infantry squads just to kill them first, so they won't really ever get to fire those plasma guns multiple turns and get the best out of them. Overall, in terms of competitiveness at the moment, I think they're a sort of a fringe case of the Astra Militarum. They can have their uses, but for the majority of cases you will be better off just with standard infantry squads, bodies to hold the line, and include special weapons in those sort of squads when they're protected by a lot more weight of bodies. In terms of damage dealing, piling out of chimeras and things, I think for the most part it is going to be more efficient to shoot things with big guns and tanks and things at the moment, just as it's a bit more of a reliable way to get firepower to the enemy, and you're not liable to lose that same important firepower pretty much the turn after. So currently I wouldn't say that they're our most competitive units by any stretch of the imagination, but I don't think that they're really going to hold you back all that much if you do integrate them into the list in a fairly sensible way. There's quite a lot of ways that you can use these. I certainly haven't gone into everything that you could do with them in this video. So if you have any other tricks or ideas, then please let us know down in the comments. I know people like to have fun with these guys, loading them up in a big Stormlord or something, and going for a bit of a party bus crusade with plasma. If you have any other cool ideas, then please let me know. If you've enjoyed the video, then feel free to subscribe to Auspex Tactics. We'll be doing plenty more Imperial Guard tactics videos over the coming months. And if you have been enjoying the channel so far, then any support on Patreon is greatly appreciated, as it is what allows me to keep on making these videos. As well as keeping the videos coming, channel Patreons also get to see some of the videos early, get to vote in what comes next for the channel, and there's also the occasional prize draw where I post out some miniatures to lucky Patreons. If any of that sounds good to you, or you just like to help out the channel, then the link is down in the description below. And of course, a very big thank you to all of you guys who are supporting already. The channel wouldn't be where it is today without your help. In any case, a massive thank you for listening, and I'll hope to see you guys next time.